Hi, my name is Dave Reske, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of Marketing in the Now, where we focus on uncovering the myths of marketing and leadership with some of the world's most interesting people. And my guest today is Dom Odoguardi. Did I get your name right, Dom?
You absolutely did, yes.
Hey, that's great. Who's the head of go-to-market strategies and part of the founding team at Trellis.ai. So, welcome to the show, Don.
Thank you for inviting me on this. This is amazing, and hello to the audience.
Yes, well, glad you're here. So, for the past year and a half, you've been experimenting with different strategies for content creation and outbound sales to really help grow Trellis's brand and revenue. And I'm excited about hearing some examples and some of your stories. But before we get into all that, tell us what Trellis is and what the company is all about.
Of course, yeah. So we are an AI powered company. I'm sure you hear that a lot these days. And it doesn't really mean much until you understand what actual challenges this quote unquote AI can help you with. So particularly for Trellis, what we specialize is working with outbound sales organizations. So anybody who is cold calling their prospects to build brand awareness or book meetings for introductory calls with their sales team, just reaching out, obviously for their own sales organizations to help solve other people's problems. And what we specifically do for these sales orgs is we give them power dialing technology as well as what's called real-time cold call coaching. So we're really hitting on two different parts of the cold call cycle: the quantity piece of it, so you can actually have enough conversations in a given day, and then the quality piece of it, making sure that those conversations are of the utmost quality and they have positive outcomes. This way the reps actually know what to say on calls and can adhere to best practices from their managers. And that's pretty much what we do.
Wow, that's so cool. So AI is really coaching them real time as they're having conversations, giving them ideas, but then they have to execute. So you're not like the AI isn't doing the sales call for them.
Exactly.
It's really
Exactly.
supporting them as they go through it. Wow, what a
Exactly.
fantastic application for AI. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, as the head of the go-to-market strategies, you've been leveraging AI for marketing for, in other ways. And what I wanted to do today is talk about a myth that you and I have been talking about, which is
Mhm.
that AI automatically allows you to create all of the content that you need with a simple prompt. Do you think that's true these days or not true?
It's absolutely true, David. No, I'm kidding. It's probably the biggest pitfall a lot of first time people using AI for the first time actually fall into. I can remember the first time I actually loaded up ChatGPT and I was thinking to myself, this thing is going to solve all my problems. And I put in one simple prompt, one sentence, and what came out was a complete mess. And that was the beginning of an endless cycle of me, constantly working back and forth. It's like a conversation, really, with the AI, trying to understand how to better refine what I was trying to produce, each and every time I sent them a message. So unfortunately, it's not that easy. You can't just do it once and think it's going to be the end all be all. You got to get a couple reiterations in there.
So let's take that apart a little bit. Let's maybe use a
Okay.
specific example. Let's say you're trying to create a blog post, something pretty
Okay.
straightforward.
Yeah.
What's the key to using basically creating the right prompts to create a good blog post? Or can you even get to the point of getting a finished product out of it at this point in your experience?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. I've had my fair share of trying to build blogs with AI with the help of ChatGPT and other GPTs and GPT 4.0 and all this stuff. The truth is that it needs a balance between the AI and the human at the end of the day. As the humans, we are supposed to get as specific as possible with the prompting. We have to give the AI a language. We have to give them a certain theme. They have to become a certain person based off of the prompting we're giving them. And then we can start actually working on the product itself, in this case, a blog post. So getting as specific as possible and then giving the AI a voice for themselves is highly beneficial for specifically building blog posts. I remember a couple of times where I was training the AI to help me build some blogs for our website, and I was telling it to be, thought-provoking, but also charismatic. And those it didn't really like it wasn't as specific enough, right? Like telling somebody to be thought-provoking really didn't capture exactly what it was supposed to be. So I had to give extreme examples of, things that other writers who I think are thought-provoking would be writing. I feed that into the AI, and that way it understands what type of voice it's supposed to have. And then from there, we can start talking about the theme of this specific blog post. What do we want to be talking about? What are the elements we want to be including? That's a whole different scenario that you're working out, a whole different prompt. So, yeah, that was a long answer for you, but that's pretty much one of the times that I was tinkering around with it. One of the first times actually. I realized that pretty fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of it you're saying is really get the voice right and have almost like a conversation, try different things to make sure you get in right voice, the right perspective. And then the content itself that you're going after. So let's just talk about the content piece. How much raw material in your experience do you need to give it to get good results out of the other side?
Yeah, I think it all depends on what good really means to you, right? If I'm somebody who has never written a blog post before and I tell ChatGPT to make me a blog post, for example, on these three key themes, and it puts something together for me, I'm probably going to be like, oh my God, this is great, right? Did the work for me. But an experienced blog writer will pick that apart pretty easily and be like, this is not correct. Like it shouldn't be going this flow. The format's all crooked. So it really first depends like what does success look like to you, right? And I had a lot of conversations with friends who um, create blogs themselves by hand, and they would pick apart what the AI was putting together for me. And based off that, we actually were able to get a bit more specific with the AI to understand what exactly it should be saying in these blog posts. Takes a lot of reiterations. Of course, success depends on what you think, but the more I like to call it ammunition, but the more ammunition you can give your AI, whatever type of product you're using to build blog posts specifically, the better it will be at actually producing that.
Yeah. I love that idea. I think that the ammunition is really key. But let me just get into one other thing you said, which is picking it apart.
Yeah.
That's something that's really hard to do with a human, isn't it? Right. So it's like if you give me a blog post, and if I pick it apart, I'm going to make you feel bad about it, right?
Exactly.
But you
Yeah.
can do that with the AI. You can kind of pick it apart. But I love what you did about with the professional writer. So if you kind of pick it apart, you're learning about what it's giving you, what it's not giving you. I wonder if that's a kind of a missed step that many people are not including in what they're doing. It's kind of that deep critical evaluation of the content they're getting so that they can learn how it's creating it, just to make it better. That process seems like you learn a lot from that process.
I mean, you're learning from somebody who is an expert in the space, and then what you're doing is you're trying to amplify it using AI. And it's in my opinion, it's a lot easier to do that than trying to learn it yourself and then write it yourself.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and you're right. I mean, I mean, to my knowledge, AI doesn't have feelings, right? Maybe I'm going to come to regret that statement in 20 years when a robot is chasing me down the street, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But it's easier to give AI feedback. That is absolutely certain. And it's interesting. I mean, there were situations where I was getting frustrated with the AI, with whatever I was working with, right? And I was basically like in all caps yelling at my AI, and they would be like replying back to me, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'll fix this and I'll do that," and it actually ended up becoming a lot better of an end product. Not saying you're supposed to yell at your AI, but when you first use this type of technology, you're like, your mind goes nuts. You're like, okay, I can say anything to this thing.
Yeah, interesting. I haven't really tried that. Tried yelling at it, but I love the
Yeah,
apology that it's now when it
that's
apologizes,
nice.
is it like the apology, like I'm sorry you feel bad about what I said to you? Is that kind of apology
Well,
or is it a real apology? I'm
yeah,
just
it's real apology. It's very interesting depending on what software you're using. I mean, this thing can have its own voice and it's very, very intuitive.
yeah. So let's talk about AI training.
Hmm.
Have you done anything basically specific to help when you're starting a project, with any project, whether it's a blog or any kind of content creation, to do training on your company background, raw material, other things like that to kind of get it ready for, you know, the content assignment?
Yeah, so I think if you're going to be rolling something out to a larger team or a larger organization, of course you need to be the one that spends the most time with it at first. You can't, go in there and after a day or two say, okay, I understand how to use this. Let me roll this out to the team. It's a bit more difficult, to be honest. You need to really get into the weeds yourself and understand it before rolling it out. Now, if, you take a team like mine, for example, we're pretty small. We're four people, and all of us have, I mean, my co-founders actually have more of a background in technology than I do. I come from a sales background. But for me, it was more like learning from them, under, seeing what they were doing. So kind of what do you want to call it? Like backseat driving in a sense, right? Watching them train the AI for different types of projects and picking apart, like understanding, why they did a certain thing, why they did another thing, really explaining as to why they were talking this way to the AI, why they were asking it to do these specific things, to get to a better end product. That made my eyes open up, and I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, so you can actually do this. Like, there's so many applications with AI these days. So the more that I think the main thing here is you need practice, you need patience, and you need to get very specific. And if you can get all those together, you're going to increase your likelihood of actually creating something successful with AI.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think it's more helpful to experts, or do you think it's more helpful to novices in a company? Like if
Mm,
you had an
yeah,
intern and you said, "Hey, welcome to the company. Glad you're
yeah,
here today.
yeah.
I'd like you to write a blog article on, you know, to help us, whatever, to do, you know,
Mm.
to get." Or is it helpful? Is it as helpful to the intern as it is to the expert? So say your co-founder, you ask him or her to write a blog article. Who's going to make the biggest and best use of that?
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting question. It's a perspective that I actually haven't looked into too much, but I think again it comes back to what are you trying to produce with AI? And if an intern is trying to produce some, if for lack of a better word, like low value thing, maybe they're trying to put together 10 locations that their target demographic is in. Very easy thing to do with AI. You plug it in, you ask it, where are the people located that spend the most amount of money in cosmetics in the world, and it gives you 10 locations. Easy to do. If you're doing something a bit more complex, that's when things are going to get much harder. I think it's kind of if you were to visualize it, it's like a graph where it's very high at the beginning, and then there's this big dip in the middle, and then it's very high at the beginning again. And what I mean by that is it's very easy to just get started and create something for beginners and having them think, oh my God, this is great. That's exactly what I felt when I started using AI. I was like, oh, this can do this for me. Amazing. But you don't know how good it actually can be. You don't know the limits of it. So when you start to go down that rabbit hole, you get into the second bucket here, which is like very low, and you're like constantly reiterating and nothing's happening. You're getting frustrated over time. And that's what separates the experts from the novices. And then the experts, they really understand how to speak to AI. They know how to create prompts to create very complex projects. So again, another very long answer for you, but that's at least what from my perspective and my experience using AI, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I love that way of thinking about it because you can get something high quality, you know, maybe it's general, generic, easy, but then you get frustrated and disappointed. Then it takes a lot of effort to kind of take it to something
Yeah,
powerful.
I remember there was actually one of my first mentors. He loves working with AI, and he was working with this stuff back before it was mainstream, let's say. And I would always compare my prompting to his prompting, and his prompting was so much better. He was getting into detail. Like if we were trying to produce an image, for example, I would say, show me an image of a wolf, in the woods at night. And he would get into the minute details about the wolf's eye color and the trees behind them and the foliage. And his image came out incredible compared to mine, of course, which was very basic. That's just one application of AI, of course, but that's an example of just how deep you can get into the rabbit hole. And if you really have like specificity and patience, you can really achieve something incredible.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going with this thought about it adds a lot of value to the expert,
Mm.
the super knowledgeable person who takes the time to kind of dig through those iterations and push it, and but if you have all the knowledge about a subject area and then you can work with the AI to really iterate to create something more powerful, it can have a lot of leverage for the expert. What do you say to people who are a little cavalier about AI, like, it'll never write as well as humans, or
Yeah.
there's no way it's going to replace a writer, or there's no way it's going to be ever be as good as my writing. What do you say to those people? Do you think that they have a point, or do you think that it's going to it'll the quality you can get the same quality?
Um, Okay. Some people may be offended by this, but I do believe AI is probably better than 90% of the creators out there currently. And the only reason why I say that is because AI has been using historic data to learn, and it has been developing itself over time. It's constantly learning. Think of somebody who is a sponge and does not put down their laptop, does not put down YouTube, or does not put down any other type of learning educational material, constantly learning over time. So that's something that human beings cannot do. Like, we are not machines. We can't constantly be trying to ingest information and understand it, but AI can. So that's one point I will say, is that's why I believe AI is a lot better at producing content than a lot of people out there. The one thing I will say is that will set apart humans from AI is how creative that we can be. AI can predict things based off of historic trends, but they're predictable. Human beings are not. We have real emotions. We have very creative insights. So using that gives us an advantage that allows us to be able to come up with ideas that AI could never have come up with, or maybe they would have come up with if, it had something historical to back it up. So that's really where the differences come into place. If you're trying to do something standard, you're trying to be like everybody else, AI is going to be able to do it for you, if not better than what you do. If you're trying to really stick out and do something completely different, I'm not sure AI has you beat there. I think if you can be creative enough, you can actually achieve something a lot more valuable than what AI can produce.
Yeah, or maybe you can create those original ideas and then leverage AI to do some of the production, some of the scale.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
I want to talk a little bit about the scale of AI. So, if you follow your methodology, you're talking about, like, you know, basically teaching it, right? So kind of getting all the background and giving it the voice, giving it the raw material. Now iterating it. So now you're to the point where you've, worked with it enough and you're getting some quality content, whether it's blogs or ads or website copy or whatever type of content you're perhaps working on, right? Maybe it's sales copy or scripts or something like that. So you're pushing it. So now that you've got this relationship that you've developed, let's call it a relationship. Um,
Yeah.
Now you're almost in a position, it feels like, to scale it, right? So now you can basically start. You've got this whole system worked out where it's got the voice, it's
Mhm.
got the background, it's got the detail, it's got now you can scale it. So are we going to move to a place where companies will think bigger about creating more content to answer all the questions their buyers have in all the formats they might want to consume, so that, your blog's not going to have two articles a month, it's going to have 50, or
Mhm.
you're going to have not a website with 30 pages, it's going to have 30,000 pages because you're going to answer all the questions. I don't know. Are we moving toward a kind of an explosion in real
Yeah.
content that's AI enabled?
I mean, I think we're already there, honestly. I see a lot of companies these days that are constantly pumping out content, whether it is for their customers and consumers to use, or maybe it's like training material that they use internally, different types of content that they create. It's just we're generating content more now than we ever have been. And I think a lot of that has to do with the ability to access AI so easily and allowing it to help us scale our content creation to a stage that we could never do by ourselves. We could never do by hand, really. I mean, if you even look at history, right? History is repeating itself. When the printing press came out, right? We were able to create newspapers a lot. easier and to a higher magnitude than writing it by hand. AI is doing the same thing for us.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. And I'm thinking about like when the internet first came out, right?
Yep,
We moved from print, you could print this out and send it out to people. Now you can have millions of people or thousands or millions.
exactly.
And now we can kind of scale it once again. So really powerful ways. Let's talk about other types of content though. So we've been talking about written content. Have
Yep.
you had an experience or tested it with video or audio content or other forms of content?
Um, I have. I have tested it with video, with pictures, ideas. And what I mean by ideas is simply just like me talking to an AI like it's a therapist and it producing ideas for me where I can use it for content. I can dive deeper into that if you'd like, but
Yeah.
I've experimented with pictures a lot recently actually because we're running a campaign right now where we're producing a lot of images using AI. And I've been staring at a screen for a long time, burning my retinas, which is why I have these blue light glasses. But it's interesting how, like I was saying before, how detailed you can get and produce something that's very high quality. And it takes you maybe an hour to do, where if you were to go have to hire a graphic designer on Fiverr or Upwork, it would take them 3 days to get back to you and communication back and forth. It's very easy to do through AI.
Yeah, that's really cool. Is the process the same for you on graphics as it is with written? Kind of background, voice, iterating.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same always. I think everybody has their own style about using AI, and that's what I really appreciate about it. It molds itself to your type of relationship, like you were saying before. So my relationship with AI, it is more about giving them a voice, telling them who they're supposed to be, and then talking about what we're supposed to produce together. And I have just found a lot more success actually building content that is helpful.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you used the audio interface, or is it all your text reading? Are you talking to it now versus
Yeah,
just
so I have not done it too much. I think I've done it maybe twice at this point. I do want to spend more time with the audio interface. But it is very interesting that you can now speak to a person. My friend has a lot more experience speaking to AI than I do, and the conversations they have are ridiculous. This person, it basically is another person at the end of the day.
hmm, that's cool. I've done
Yeah.
it for personal applications, like travel specifically,
Yeah.
kind of, but I haven't done it as much for business applications, but I've used more text interface. So I'll have to try that myself. What
Yeah.
about video? Have you done any video examples?
Yeah. I've done a couple of them. I'll be honest, I don't think I have created anything that is super interesting as of yet. I'm still playing around with the video because I think it's only been 6 months now that you've been able to access video, and it's been getting better and better month over month. But I haven't really found a way to make it to the again back to what I think is success, make it to the same level as me producing a video. But it's getting there, absolutely. And it's all, like I was saying before, it's all about patience. It's all about how specific you can get with the prompting to have this actually create a video that's worthwhile for you. Some
Yeah.
people have mastered it. I'm not sure if you spend any time watching on YouTube or even Facebook has them sometimes, people creating videos with AI with incredible transitions. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. Well, it's pretty cool that you've created a process to really get good quality content. And it feels like we're moving to a place where users will be able to benefit from getting answers to their question, all the information they need in any format that they want, in a way that's, what is it, 90% cheaper for you to create. So
Exactly.
actually, let's talk about those economics a little bit because you're still using your time to create these things, right?
Exactly.
So
Correct.
there is some effort involved. So you're
Mhm.
not hiring someone at a different hourly rate than you might be worth in your
Mhm.
role. What do you estimate? the cost savings to be in creating a piece of content? And I know that's a
Yeah.
really hard number to think about, but as you just kind of like guesstimate, like are we talking about, is it 50% cheaper, 99% cheaper? How do you kind of quantify it?
Well, I mean, I look at it through the lens of compounding value. At the beginning, you're going to be spending a lot of time trying to understand how to talk to AI and how to actually use it to produce something of value for you. And as you get better at it, and as AI gets better, as we've seen, AI has been getting better every single day, basically. Your input is going to become a lot easier, to be honest. To give you an example, when I made my first blog post with AI, think it took me 10 hours actually to make one single blog because I was constantly going back and forth, day after day. I was spending a couple of hours trying to actually tailor this thing and I wasn't getting it to work. And after a week, spending about 10 hours on the project, I finally came to a final product that I was happy with. Now I can probably get it done within 30 minutes.
Mhm.
So it compounds, but it's compounding on two different levels. It's compounding on your own education and experience using the software, and also the software itself getting better and better over time. So I think for somebody who is very good at leveraging AI, they are going to be able to see a higher ROI than a beginner who's trying to, build a business off of AI with no prior experience. It's, a bit naive at that point. I know that some companies have gone as far as hiring prompting engineers. All they've done for the past 4 or 5 years is speak to AI, understand its language, understand how to leverage it. And these people pretty much are normal engineers, but except instead of coding, they're talking.
And do you think the prompt engineer job has a role in marketing? Do you think that could really work in marketing, or
Yeah.
do marketers themselves need to become experts at being prompt engineers?
Well, I think it depends on what type of marketing you're trying to create. I think AI can definitely be helpful for creating ideas and validating ideas. If to give you an example, if I go and I speak to my AI right now and I say, "Hey, I have these 10 different ideas for a video that I'd like to produce for my company. Which one do you think is best?" It's going to give you some generic answers most likely. I mean, it doesn't really understand you to the extent that you know yourself, but it will be able to kind of paint different ideas in different lights. And so you can see the pros and the cons and the opportunities with them. I think now if you're going to AI and asking it to build you an entire campaign, I think that's where some people kind of get messed up because it's very difficult to do these big complex projects, especially if you are using AI for the first time. So if you are an engineer and you know how to leverage AI and you've been using it for many, many years, you're probably going to have an easier time building out a marketing campaign using AI, using machine learning technology, than somebody who is doing it for the first time. But if you're trying to create little minute stuff, like a post here and there, then you can probably take care of it yourself. You probably don't need an engineer, is my philosophy.
Interesting. So there's a role for kind of the average person, for the expert, for us to be learning and growing with it. But
Mm.
there may be a role for engineers who think more structured and systematically to create
Yeah.
results that are bigger and more powerful, and maybe
Yeah.
more comprehensive. Is what you're saying, like as you said, could you have with the right prompt, with the right structural prompts, could you create an entire marketing campaign with all of the elements automatically? Whereas if I was doing it, I might create one at a time and iterate each one, right? Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the right analogy for this would be if you are trying to build a website using a Wix or any other type of like website provider that makes it very easy for you to go in there, change a couple of fonts, change some colors, add some text, and you're good. That is basically, you know, easy to do relatively. But now if you want a very complex website, something that's very interactive and different than what every other website looks like. Now you're going to need somebody with a lot more experience. Someone else is going to have to build that for you. You can't build that yourself. That's where hiring some sort of AI expert or machine learning engineer or somebody who can actually take care of these things will come in handy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, Last question. We're kind of running out of time here. If maybe think about like a senior marketing person who's got a lot of experience in the industry, but has not really jumped into AI yet. They've been really focused on their job and their maybe
Mhm.
their tried and true tools and methods. What advice would you give them to get to a level of expertise to really learn how to use this effectively?
Yeah. I would say ju the same advice that a lot of very successful investors give their clients. Start as soon as you can and start small and have patience. And what that looks like is spending maybe an hour a weekend playing around with AI, then increase that, to 2 hours every weekend. Then try to merge it a little bit into your workday, right? If you're trying to create something and you feel like you're comfortable, sacrificing some time out of your workday to have the AI create it for you, then have the AI create it for you at that point. So you're incrementally putting more and more of AI into your daily life. And what you're doing is giving yourself an opportunity to learn. And then you're also giving yourself an advantage because if you don't use AI, you're most likely going to be left behind. There's very few jobs in this world, at least in marketing, that are going to be able to survive without leveraging AI in some sort of capacity.
Wow. Yeah, that's great advice. And it's kind of almost a challenge for all of us to use it as
Yeah,
effectively as possible. Well, Dom, this has been a great conversation. It sounds like you've had a lot of good experience. Thank you for sharing it with the
of
audience.
course.
If
Yeah,
people want to connect with you and learn more about Trellis or, how you used AI, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
absolutely. Yeah. I think LinkedIn, I'm very active on there. So if you'd like to connect with me, it's literally just my first and last name, Dom Odoguardi, on LinkedIn. And I put out a lot of content about Trellis, put out content about startups leveraging AI. So yeah, I would go for that.
Great. Thanks again for taking the time.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you.